All right, I really appreciate Dr. Moorkamp, and I love dentists. I'm not an anti-dentite. Just put that out there. It's a joke, Mayor. So, and they spoke very well. I thought that they had a great presentation, and I started to believe it myself. So, you know, there are 2 points to this issue, and I want to deal with some of these issues. But I actually feel like Germany must have felt like when Sherman came through in the Third Army, marching through, just tearing up everything, after I've sat through a 45-minute presentation. So, but anyway, that being said, let's walk through this. I've actually thought about, because we have a long presentation tonight, I'm really okay presenting another night. I want to, okay? Perfect. All right, very good. I just warned you, you guys, you had the chance to say uncle, so there you go. So, Lori, I might need a little help with this. F5. Am I good?
Here. I mean, you're all
Come
right.
in.
What's wrong? What are you trying to do?
I'm trying to make it full screen. I guess it just stays full screen like that, doesn't it?
We see it full.
Okay, and then it just toggles this way. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, so, you know, some of the issues that the dentist brought up I thought were really good issues. And I want to speak to some of these things because there is a toxicity level that needs to be addressed. And I will tell you that at the end of the day, that many of the studies that are relied upon to understand this issue were done many years ago. The preponderance of evidence that's coming out over the last years, we're seeing more and more evidence about the toxicity of fluoride. And it's not just IQ, but it's other things, which I'm going to talk about. So first, let's get to the federal judge Chin's. This comes out of his ruling. And keep in mind, let me back up. Food and Water Watch Incorporated, along with a bunch of other people, sued the EPA. As a backstory, the EPA union tried to sue the EPA over fluoride earlier, but they were not allowed to do that. So this group came along, and it took years to bring this lawsuit. This was not somebody just walking into court one day and presenting evidence, and then all of a sudden they're like, okay, you know, a flash of a pen, there you go. This was a well thought out, well-designed court case. And so when the judge makes a remark that he said plaintiffs have proven by a preponderance of evidence that water fluoridation at the level of 0.7 milligrams per liter, which is what we use in Rolla, the prescribed optimal level of fluoridation in the United States presents an unreasonable risk of injury to the health or environment. And moving on, it says the bottom line, without consideration of cost or other non-risk factors, including an unreasonable risk to a potentially exposed or susceptible subpopulation under the conditions of use. And that's the point I want to bring out. Subpopulation is a key word. What does subpopulation mean? That means if you look at something statistically, it may look like a statistical error, but there are some children and there are some people, pregnant mothers, older people with kidney disease, they don't have the same level of detoxification pathways inherently, genetically. They don't clear fluoride like everybody else does, and that becomes the subpopulation. That's the population that gets dinged. Even the poor, or I should say the whatever they call it, the population that has less resources. So moving forward, whether you do anything in life, it doesn't matter what it is, you always have to do a risk-benefit assessment. You do it whether you know it or not. If you're going to bungee jump, you're going to think about the risk and you're going to think about the benefit. Personally, I'm not going to do that. It's too much risk. If you take a cold medication, whether you know you're doing it or not, you innately are looking at, I'm going to take this medication, the risk, does it outweigh the benefit or the other way around? We have to have this analysis. As far as the benefit is concerned, Dr. Moorkamp very well lined this out as Cochrane's study, and I want to talk a little bit about this. 157 studies, so this is a meta-analysis. This is a gold standard when you really want to ferret something out and understand the meaning. You can get one study, even if it's a randomized control study, double-blind, placebo, you can do all that, but that does not hold the weight that a meta-analysis does. And a meta-analysis is taking a series of studies and then coming up with conclusions based upon reviewing those studies. And this study, the Cochrane report, which came out, I believe, October last month, 2024, they compared communities that had fluoride added to their water supplies with communities that had no additional fluoride in the water. They found that the benefit of fluoridation has declined since the 1970s when fluoride toothpaste became widely available. And these are just some excerpts. When interpreting the evidence, it is important to think about the wider context and how society and health has changed over time. Most of the studies on water fluoridation are over 50 years old before availability of fluoride toothpaste. Contemporary studies give us more relevant picture of what's going on now. The evidence suggests that water fluoridation may slightly reduce tooth decay in children. Given the benefit has reduced over time before introducing a new fluoridation scheme, careful thought should be made. And here's just some conclusion. They're adding fluoride supply. A water supply may lead to slightly less tooth decay. Then, of course, they talked about the mineralization over time. They addressed that. All right, so systemic versus topical. I think they spoke very well about that. But this is part of the debate. And one of the things that they find is that that fluoride, well, let me just go to a study that they did. Let me back up here. Let's just do it here. Okay. So they wanted to find, originally, let me go back to this. I got on this wrong track here. Okay. The belief that fluoride has to be ingested and act preventatively by becoming incorporated into tooth mineral during its development originated from early studies, 1942 and 1952. 42 and 1952. So the thought was that pre-eruption systemic mode of fluoride was actually building enamel, and now there's controversy over that because they've done different studies, and this is one of the studies. If you look here, it says one group received fluoride supplements from birth and the other starting at 7 months, and there was no statistically significant difference in DMFs. These are dental decays, missing teeth, and these. It's a score they use to see dental health. So there's no statistically significant difference in the DMFs scores in primary teeth at age 5, indicating that fluoride exerts a post-eruptive effect, and that fluoride supplementation starting from birth is unnecessary. So what they're talking about here is that the fluoride has the effect once the teeth have actually broke through as a post-eruptive. You guys okay with that?
Yep.
I was just up here in my head, and I don't know if you guys are paying attention or not. All right. What's that? Taking notes. Good. This is perhaps one of the... Do you have some water over there? Did you get me some water over
It's
there?
fluorinated.
This is bottled. Well, I don't know. Maybe if I grow really tall, then I'm going to say fluoride helps you get tall because all these dentists are tall. A definite height advantage here, disadvantage.
Oh my, you want me to do that for you?
Please. All right.
Lori's about to tip up.
This is one of the more telling slides. This is about tooth decay. If you look at this chart, the ones that are in blue are areas...
Next slide.
Where is it? Okay, it's up here. It's on mine.
No.
Is it not?
No.
We were having a good time up here. Okay, let me try this. Okay.
This way.
Froze up.
Yep, sure did. Where were you? Was this it?
Don't. Keep
More?
on going. Keep rolling. Keep rolling.
Keep going.
They don't want to have to do that again. All right, that's good right there. So this is a telling study right here. Tooth decay trends in fluoridated and non-fluoridated countries. So if you look at the blue, you can see the decrease in dental decay, tooth decay, and you can also see it in the red. The red are those that are fluoridated countries, sorry. And the common denominator here is fluoride toothpaste. That's what they believe. So once people had access to fluoride toothpaste, then we had better results. They've actually done these DMFS scores, and they find that the Netherlands and Finland and those areas have the best teeth in the world when you measure DMFSs, and parts of Germany and those areas. And one thing they all have in common is they don't have fluoride in their water.
They also have universal health care, so there's that too.
They do fluoridate their salt.
Okay, so with all due respect, if I'll finish this, then I will entertain questions. Okay. All right. So this is a telling sign. Now, according to the EPA, they asked the EPA what consists of toxicity from fluoride. What consists of toxicity? And they said osteofluorosis. Is there anything else? No, there's nothing else, according to the EPA. And if you look at this, the spine that is on the right, you can tell. You don't have to be a radiologist. You can see that that's not right. There's a lot of bone in there. And so you're not going to see a lot of people wake up one day and just have that. Now, this is not going to be from somebody with 0.7 milligrams per liter. You're not going to see that at all. You're not even going to see that with 1.5 or what they used to do like 30 years ago at 4. You're just not going to see that. But the idea here is it's not considered toxic in that realm until you get to spinal fluorosis. Now, moving on. There's a body called National Toxicology Program. It's a governmental agency that has some dealings with the FDA. It also has dealings with human or HHS as well. So the NTP's moderate confidence conclusion for developmental neurotoxicity in human studies supports a presumed hazard conclusion when applying the NTP's OHAT methodology. And here's a slide right here that's pretty interesting. I think one of the dentists talked about drops in IQ. And if you look at this comes from this group right here, the National Toxicology Program, and they say that there's no evidence of a threshold at 1.5 milligrams per liter or 0.7 milligrams per liter water fluoride concentration. And what they found here, if you look at this, is they were looking at, now keep in mind they had moderate confidence, which is not absolute confidence. So I don't want to overblow this. So three IQ points lost at fluoride levels at 0.7 and 6 lost at 1.5. So you just have to argue with them about that. So latest NTP, this is interesting. They did a monograph in 2020. They did one in 2022. The point behind this is the body of evidence is strengthening. It is growing larger. It's growing larger. Moderate confidence. All right, so I apologize because that should have come up. Oh, yeah, it did come up. Okay, can you see that? Okay. So maternity urinary fluoride in child neurobehavior at age 36 months. This comes from JAMA, JAMA Network. This is a Journal of American Medical Association. This is not a fringe group. This is a very serious journal. If you look in the world of journals, you have the JAMA, you have BMJ, you have the Lancet, and you have New England Journal of Medicine. It's kind of being the big four. There's a lot of journals out there, but this is not JAMA per se, but it's part of that network. And this is what they said. this comes out of that study. These findings suggest that prenatal fluoride exposure may increase the risk of neurobehavioral problems among children living in an optimally means they 0.7 milligrams per liter, fluoridated areas in the United States. I know these are inconvenient studies, but this is what we're seeing. And I don't doubt anything the dentist has said. I think they did a great presentation. I liked it. In fact, I enjoyed it. But at the end of the day, they're not toxicologists, and I'm not a toxicologist either. I'm just reading these studies. I'm reading you studies. I'm showing you studies. I'm pointing studies out that are verifiable, solid studies. So it means it's something we have to consider. Are fluoride levels in drinking water associated with hypothyroid? This comes out of BMJ. It's one of the big four. BMJ journals, Journal of Epidemiology and Community Health. Are fluoride levels in drinking water associated with hypothyroidism prevalence in England? A large observational study. So in England, they have about 10% of their water supplies are fluoridated and 90% are not. The mayor brought up a great point a couple of weeks ago when he talked about, well, there's some areas that have more fluoride and less fluoride and so on and so forth. So I thought this was a pretty good study because there's only 10% of that water system, and because they have the system that they have, they're able to track these statistics. And this is these are some of the things that they found in this. I'll read the very first from the background. While previous research has suggested that there's an association between fluoride ingestion and the incidence of hypothyroidism, few population-level studies have been undertaken. In England, approximately 10% of the population live in areas with community fluoridation schemes, and hypothyroidism prevalence can be assessed in the general practice. Here's this is from that conclusion. High hypothyroidism prevalence has found to be at least 30% more likely in practices located in areas, these are like the medical practices, in areas with fluoride levels in excess of 0.3 milligrams per liter. This population study supports earlier hypothesis that fluoride is associated with hypothyroidism. Now let me back up. Dr. Moorkamp put a periodic chart up there. I thought it was great. He had fluoride, chloride, and you go two things underneath that, and you get iodide or iodine. As it turns out, you can think of a thyroid protein or a thyroid hormone looks like this. Think of it as looking like a fist. That's a protein, that's a thyroid protein. Coming off of it, you have 4 iodines. Those travel through the body, they get into the cell, and then there's an enzyme that takes one of those iodines off, and it becomes what's called T3. 3 stands for iodine. That's what goes into, communicates with the DNA of the mitochondria and of the DNA itself, and it activates it to make proteins and make the cell come alive. Thyroid hormone and cortisol are the only 2 hormones that actually go directly to the DNA. All the rest of them touch the cell membrane. So thyroid goes directly to the DNA, activates the mitochondria, activates the DNA itself. As it turns out, fluorine can replace the iodine. And when it does, the thyroid hormone becomes inert. Does this happen on everybody? Absolutely not. Does it happen on some people? Yes, it does. Right now, if you look at the top 3 drugs in the United States today, any given year, you're going to find a statin on the top, and you'll find hypothyroid, like a levothyroxine and Synthroid on the top, every year. Why is that? Because we have a huge prevalence of hypothyroidism in our country and in our community. It's everywhere. Now, fluoride's not the only cause. There are many things that can drive it. But fluoride most definitely can, even at these modest levels, drive hypothyroidism. So everything in life is a trade-off. all the beautiful things that the dentist talked about, I agree with. I don't disagree with that. I think it's wonderful. We have to have children to have healthy teeth. I think it would be better to teach them to stop eating so much sugar. That would be a good place to go. But in the end, there's a trade-off. It's not like when you make a decision, there's not always like this is 100% and it's 0% over here. You have to make decisions. Fluoride exposure and thyroid hormone levels in pregnancy. This is from here. This is from that study. Fluoride exposure was associated with alterations in maternal thyroid hormone levels, the magnitude of which appears to vary fetal sex. Let me explain something here. Very common in my practice. We do this all the time. Ladies come in, and if they're pregnant, we monitor that thyroid like crazy. The first trimester. Low thyroid is one of the most common reasons for miscarriage in the first trimester. Thyroid hormone is integral to the brain development of the child. So if a mother's pregnant and she has hypothyroid, it can detrimentally affect the child's brain development and or it can lead to miscarriage. And I'm not trying here to talk about fluoride doing that. I'm not trying to make that drastic of a leap, but I am definitely saying that according to the studies that fluoride in the water, even at 0.3, less than half of what we do, can relate or potentially can relate to hypothyroid. And anything that's related to hypothyroid can drive these problems. So, a couple of things. They do not use fluoridated water in kidney dialysis units. They can't because it's detrimental and deadly to the patients. Why is that? Because if you have chronic kidney disease, you cannot clear fluoride. So, chronic kidney disease is a funny thing. We see this a lot in our office. It is a silent disease. What that means is this. You don't know you have it. We only find it when somebody gets a blood test. You might have puffy ankles, you might be a little nauseated, you might be fatigued, but you wouldn't necessarily put it together and say, aha, I have kidney disease. You go get a blood test and your GFR is down below 30. And so this is chronic kidney disease. Chronic kidney disease patients can't clear fluoride as well. So this is important. So these are things we have to think about. All right, so this is a sacred cow. This thing has been here, and we've heard it's the fourth greatest development of medicine throughout our lifetimes. But I think we have to take a serious consideration to the toxicity and what's going on. Now, I'm not arguing with the good things that the dentist said about the benefits of what we get from the fluoride as far as that's concerned. But I would say that largely benefit from the fluoride. You get a large benefit from our fluoridated toothpaste, as we could see from the graph I showed, where areas without fluoridated water, and by the way, those areas, not all of those areas just happen to have high fluoride. That statistically is just not reasonable to think that that could be. So anyway, that is the presentation. If you guys have any questions, I will do my best to answer.
Question for Dr. Kessinger. Did the doctor back there have a question?
Yes.
Was there a question that you had back there?
I'll come speak if you're done, or you go.
Yeah, okay.
I was just saying something along the way.
And Dr. Rob, can I say
Yes,
something real
please.
quick? I was just going to say, and fluoride is not an essential nutrient.
Yeah, that's correct. It is a drug. And by the way, I didn't have this. I want to put this on here because this is not, I don't know why this is not working. I don't have my last slide up there.
Okay, I got it. Oh, my.
That's okay. You're good. Okay, go ahead. I'll put it up. I'll take care of it.
Oh, that's it.
Yes.
So one of the things we talked about, subpopulations that don't clear fluoride. Yet it's very well known that tea, black tea, green tea have 8 to 10 times as much fluoride as what we're talking about, with drinking water. The systemic versus topical fluoride, we talked about the difference between 0 and 7 months. Those teeth are still developing at both 0 and 7 months. So the teeth are still getting fluoride systemically. I did look into a lot of the European and Scandinavian countries like Germany. They do not fluoridate their water. However, the same way we have iodine in our salt, they have fluoride in their salt. So they are getting systemic fluoride. It's just being delivered to them differently.
I'll have to check that out.
I can show you a picture if you'd like. So the scary picture that I mentioned about skeletal fluorosis, it's terrifying. There's been like 3 or 4 cases of that in the United States ever. And the one, like I did learn about that a long time ago in dental school, and they showed this lady's spine. She drank like 3 gallons of hot tea a day, green tea. She was getting like 20 milligrams a day for 2 decades. So there's that. And then, sorry, I was trying to find where my, regardless, kidney patients, yes, they're difficult patients to manage. Tea, as we've mentioned, has a lot more fluoride in it than water does at these concentrations. According to Google, yes, people with kidney disease can drink tea in moderation, but they do have to consider what kind. And then
This is your second presentation.
well, I feel like we should have a little back and forth. But anyway.
No, I appreciate that.
There's a little more to the details
Yeah,
than what's...
I appreciate that, and I do thank you guys for coming out.
Okay.
So the last thing I would like to say is that, so it is a medication. It's not just an element. It is a medication. Medication is something you use to have a desired effect, and that's exactly what it is. And this really is, I Googled this up, mass medication without informed consent. And that's the first thing that came up was that picture. I just thought that was kind of interesting, litigation to end fluoridation. Because they talked about people being sued if you take the water out. Well, people are starting to get sued for having the water in. So that kind of cuts both ways. And mass medication without informed consent. I think the mayor brought up a point the other day. I don't want to blame this on the mayor. It could have been somebody else. But that, well, kids just don't brush their teeth enough. Well, I don't think it's the city's really business to make sure they're brushing their teeth. I think people have got to take care of their kids and do the things they should. I think we live in a free country, and I think that I think that this is something that that we need to consider. So, any questions?
I guess I would have one more question. I had seen some stuff about the fluoride, that it's actually often an industrial byproduct, what they use.
Yes.
It's an industrial product that typically makes it. But that, I don't know what that means.
So,
Industrial processes make a lot of everyday things that you would.
yeah, so I can specify, so.
I know how it's made.
From fertilizer production, which has been raising ethical and environmental questions about using waste products in public health measures. So wastewater containing fluoride, studies say, that it has been impacting ecosystems. I just wondered if that's anything anybody had heard.
I think that's,
From fertilizer. That's what fluoride is? No, that's what that is.
Rob, I have one question. I just want to make sure that I understood correctly. So when you were talking about fluoride and iodine, you were expressing that fluoride replaces iodine, which is essential for the thyroid.
I said it can.
It can. Right. So really what it comes down to is a benefit or a loss in either direction. We're talking about one part of the body versus another part of the body. Would that
I believe so. Yes.
I think one of the last comments that stood out to me was about, because they kind of mentioned that it's very definitively not a drug, and you very definitively said it was a drug. And I was just curious, maybe that's a difference of definition, because you're saying it's something that's introduced to create a deliberate result?
Yeah.
And you're saying that's what you're,
Yeah, that's correct.
by definition, that's what
correct.
you're calling a
That's
drug.
correct. That's correct. And also, it's the fluoride that's put in the water is a synthetic. It's not.
Natural.
Yeah, it's synthetic. It's
So
not-
what's added to water is not,
like there's sodium fluoride is the most common thing that goes in.
so there is natural type fluoride.
That's right.
That's not what's added to our drinking
That's
water.
correct. That is correct.
You're adding the fluoride, the
Yeah.
fluorine ion. How you get it there is almost irrelevant. Whether it's from a natural substance or a synthetic substance, what's being added is the F.
But handles it. I mean, I have no idea. I just know that when you're arguing between natural and synthetic, how your body
I don't think
responds
it's a
to it
relevant
will
discussion.
change.
Nor do I think the discussion on how it's made is necessarily relevant. We can debate all of these things, which are valid debates.
I was just asking a question.
I know, I'm just saying, but how it's made and how it's put in there is secondary. It's the F.
So it says right here, I just Googled it up and says they are regulated as drugs by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration.
Yes.
So,
Thank you, Rob.
Go ahead, Nathan.
So I want to just throw in, though, I read the case, and it specifically says it's not a drug. Now, it may be a medicine, and you use the term medicine and drug interchangeably, but the term drug is a term of art. And if it had been a drug, then it would be regulated by the Food and Drug Administration. This was a case against the EPA. And the argument in
That's correct.
the argument in the case was that fluoride, and this is actually getting to what Megan was saying, fluoride in the environment has adverse environmental effects, some of which are affecting people, but also affecting the environment in ways. That's what that case was about. And the case was asking the EPA to study it and regulate it, because the EPA, up to this point, has not considered it to be an environmental thing. And so really what the case is about is, should the EPA take jurisdiction, but not whether the FDA should take jurisdiction.
yes, I agree.
Which is getting back to the PFAS, where the F is fluoral, kenol, something. So the PFAS in the EPA is huge right now. So it's getting drug into, there's an F in that, so let's go look at the other Fs that we're putting in there, so.
Okay, that's a whole lot to digest.
Yes.
Thank you to all the
Thank you.
folks that presented for taking your time, not only to give the presentation, but there's obviously a lot of work that went to prepare that, so. Moving on